Well, as we all should do on Women's Day, we continue to focus on the achievements and the contributions of women around the country and indeed around the world. But it's a sad reality. Many sectors don't receive the same recognition as men. That includes professional sport. Women players in many sports are still paid far too less, in fact much more less than men, sometimes for the very same event. Someone who's making as much difference as she can, Tanya Harford, a well-known sporting events organizer of a major sporting event here in South Africa and also CEO of Harford Sports Promotions, joining me via Skype all the way over from the UK. Hello, Tanya. It's a massive pleasure to have you here on ENCA. I can't say the name of your town. Twyford, I think is how you would say it. A happy Women's Day to you, and yet you and I still sit here discussing the disparity in pay in professional sport for women.
Yeah, and you know, and thanks, Gareth, for inviting me on. It's such a sad thing, but I think it also extends into the workplace. So, you know, but I'm going to focus rather on women's sports, and I think there are some sports that are doing better things. And I just like to say to all the guys out there that go, yeah, women, you know, you don't have to train as hard, or you don't have to go be as physical, and you know how you know. You're not on the court for 5 hours. And I'd like them to consider this argument, that we pay the same for an aeroplane flight, for meals, for coaches, for tennis balls, for sports equipment. We pay the same price as the men are paying. So if you want men to earn more money, then maybe we shouldn't be paying as much for other things. And at the end of the day, we should all be seen as equal, across the board. Men, women, green, pink, whatever your orientation, we are all citizens of this world.
And Tanya, for the benefit of our viewers, I think it's fair to only remind them that you are an ex-professional tennis player. Back in the day, this is a fight you were having then. These days, you run many sporting events. One of those is Ride Joburg, probably one of the biggest timed cycling races, if not on the continent, perhaps the world, arguably. And you've been fighting to make sure that there's equal pay for men and women.
We have. I mean, we took that policy many years ago that we would pay equal prize money, and the only consideration we took into play was that if there was a deeper men's field, i.e. if there were 150 men and only 40 women, we would probably just take the men's prize money down to, say, number 20 and the women to number 15 odd. But yes, we've been great proponents of equal prize money. Equal pay for equal work.
From the sponsorship perspective, I can't imagine how difficult it is to put an event together. You've got budgets to work around, especially a televised event, which your events often are. How are sponsors supporting what you're trying to get right? Because ultimately they pay for the coverage in the end. Is that a tricky debate to have with sponsors?
You know, I think there's some really forward-thinking sponsors, and I mean, I'd like to mention Momentum when they were with us, and even today they are great advocates of women in sport. And I think it takes vision from those in those positions of being able to make those decisions, and there are many who don't. And you know, I think our biggest gripe in women's sports is there's so many brands and so many people who say, oh, absolutely, we support women's sport, we support women in everything, and then when it comes to putting their money where their mouth is, they're sadly lacking. Or we do the other side of things and we just pink it and shrink it. So we just take a men's product and we make it look pretty. That's not what we're really looking for. We're looking to be seen as individuals in our own right, and capable individuals. And I think this also transcends into the boardroom and across the entire workforce.
And that's where I was going to ask you to go next with you, because this conversation doesn't just happen with you putting together an event and a willing sponsor. These discussions happen behind closed doors long before you get the signature to run an event. What does that look like when Tanya Harford and your sports promotions company is trying to negotiate this? Do you get a lot of kickback?
Well, you know, the sponsorship pot is so small, so that it often can be that it's just the generic argument of, you know, we get more value out of men's sport. We think, I mean, the US women's soccer team is a case in point, where they've proved that they've gotten bigger viewership, bigger response from the community, and spectators finding the women's soccer far more attractive than the men's soccer. And if I look at English rugby and the English women's rugby and the netball, so there are some really strong counter arguments to say that women's sport is not that exciting. I think it's fantastic, and I think if you can understand on a one-to-one basis what we're bringing to the party and how enjoyable it can be to watch, and that we don't only have to see men running around and being physical and whatever. I'm not disputing that men have, amazing sporting prowess, and some of the best matches I've seen in tennis have been between, a Roger Federer or John McEnroe and a Djokovic, and go back to Pete Sampras and Stefan Edberg. But please just remember that Martina Navratilova and Billie Jean King and Chris Evert and Coco Gauff and Serena Williams, what has she done for women's sport? The woman is a goddess to women's sport.
Tanya Harford, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed. A pleasure speaking to you. Tanya Harford from the UK, Harford Sports Promotions CEO, speaking to us about the gender disparity in pay for sports, not just in South Africa, but as you hear, around the world.